Nightmare situation, me 35F with partner 40M, my son and his nephew 15MS. 4 years ago I met Bob 40M. Bob had recently become the guardian of his nephew Ben after the death of Ben's parents in a car accident. Ben is the same age as my son Jason, 11 at the time, now 15. At first it seemed perfect. I was over the moon at finding a man who was not put off by the prospect of taking on a soon-to-be teenage stepson. Jason's father is not in the picture, and in spite of being very different personalities, the boys got along from the beginning, so Bob and Ben moved into my house within less than a year. Ben was always a quieter, more creative kid where Jason is more athletic and boisterous, and from the start I got the sense that Bob understood Jason's way of being more than he did Ben's. At first he would take them both to sports games, but Ben obviously had no interest and so pretty soon he just took Jason. At the time it seemed like a natural choice. Ben was bored at the games and Jason honestly reveled in having all Bob's attention, but after that things started unraveling. As they grew older the difference in the boys became more obvious, their choices of clothing, hairstyle, friends, music, hobbies, etc., and so did Bob's preference. He started making little comments comparing them and encouraging Ben to be more like Jason. At first it seemed like he was trying to be helpful, thinking that Jason's way of being was healthier. He's more outgoing, has a more active social life, etc., because that's what he remembered from his own experience, but after a while there was clear snidiness there which it was impossible not to hear. My son has always had a strong protective streak, sense of fairness, and in spite of their differences and the late age they were introduced, he and Ben are very close, so Jason's reaction to Bob's remarks favoring him was to take Ben's side. He stopped going to games with Bob and generally liking him, and for a while became openly hostile on Ben's behalf. That stopped once he and Bob had a major argument. Jason backed down at that point because, he told me, he realized that if he kept making himself unpleasant, Bob and I might break up, in which case Ben would have to leave too. Since then, with a few exceptions, he has been coldly civil. Meanwhile, Bob has come to believe Ben is gay based on what I consider spurious evidence, not that it matters to me whether he is or not. He wanted to send him to a military-type reform school, and when I vetoed that, his behavior towards Ben has escalated to a subtle kind of downright nastiness. Needless to say, all of the above strained Bob's and my relationship to breaking point and then broke it. Seeing his ongoing behavior towards a child who needs him, I can no longer look at him with anything but disgust. The thought of him touching me makes my skin crawl, and I desperately want him out of my house. We're not married and it's still in my sole name, thank God, but now I have the same problem Jason was worried about. If I end the relationship and kick Bob out, Ben will have to go too, since legally I have no tie to him whatever. He's 15 now, and although he has borne everything by stoically ignoring Bob, I can't in good conscience let that man be solely responsible for him. For what it's worth, I have always tried to stick up for him and get Bob to see that there are many types of boy in the world and all of them are equally okay. Not to mention, I don't think Jason would ever forgive me if I did. I would happily take guardianship of Ben if I could, even if Bob made no financial contribution at all. We could manage if we cut back on luxuries. My concern is that I am far from sure Bob would agree. However he personally feels about Ben is still his flesh and blood, and Bob feels strongly about that. To be honest, I think it's part of the reason he resents Ben so much. Ben is the last of the line and not turning out how Bob thinks his family should be represented. If I were to start a conversation along those lines and Bob refused to allow Ben to stay, it would be incredibly difficult to roll back. The idea of having to continue to play his supportive wife to stop him leaving of his own accord for another 2.5 years till Ben turns 18 sounds like a nightmare, but the alternative is worse. What is the best way to manage and get through this? Update to nightmare situation, me 35F with partner 40M, my son and his nephew 15MS. Original post, situation me 35F with partner 40M, my son. Hi again everyone. I posted about my family problem about a month ago and was bowled over by the amount of kind and extremely helpful comments I got. Someone requested an update, so I'm posting now to tell you what's happened since. To be honest, it's also to unburden myself. The boys are really sweet, but I obviously can't talk to them about these things, and there aren't a lot of people in my life I feel comfortable sharing all the details with. I suppose I'm embarrassed. The week after my original post, I met with a family lawyer I know to go over options. I actually wrote down the legal suggestions posted here to discuss with her, but unfortunately, after going over each and several others in detail, we had to conclude that for each one, while it might technically be feasible, it would either take too long to be practical, or require things from Bob or from Ben which for various reasons were not ideal. Following the meeting, I was mulling things over and decided to take a long, hard look at our finances to see what might be affordable as a compromise, such as perhaps sending Ben to a good boarding school and pay tuition up front, so that if I then left Bob it would be easier and cheaper for him to leave Ben there rather than move him to a different school. Anyway, I went over our financial records with a fine-tooth comb, and that's when I discovered Bob was cheating on me, and had been for the entirety of our relationship. It turns out that, prior to Ben's parents' death, Bob had been about to move in with another woman. This woman didn't want kids, so when Bob was suddenly faced with taking custody of Ben or seeing him placed in foster care, she made it clear she would not be involved. For the record, I can't say I blame her. I love my boys with all my heart. But asking someone who never wanted kids to parent a bereaved 11-year-old she has never met is not in anyone's best interests, in my opinion. When I confronted him about the affair, he didn't even attempt to deny it. He seemed ashamed, and just asked what happened next, so I told him that next he was going to get his stuff and get out of my house, but first ask Ben if he wants to go or stay, because it wouldn't be fair to disrupt the poor kid's life any further. Ben quickly said he preferred to stay, and Bob seemed frankly relieved. He moved out that weekend, and I haven't seen him since. We've been in touch by text to discuss financial arrangements, though, and last week he sent me money to cover Ben's basic expenses, nothing like as much as child support, but under the circumstances I'll take it and be glad. From his attitude I take it that he's seeing this as a long-term thing, but even he doesn't, according to the family lawyer. His leaving Ben with me even for a while, along with Ben's age and the fact that Bob is his guardian rather than his father, would make it easier to build a case for Ben to stay even if Bob does try to fight it. The lawyer is confident that such a battle could be won, or at least dragged out till Ben is 18 and it doesn't matter anymore. So that, as you can imagine, has been an enormous relief. That makes it that much harder to admit that finding out about Bob has still hit me hard. The fact is that, even though I was absolutely done with him and wanted him out, there was a time I truly believed he wanted to be with me and that we could build a life together. I knew our relationship wasn't a romance for the ages or anything like that, but it was by far the best I'd had since before my son was born, and I really thought we cared for it and valued one another. Now I realize that all he ever wanted from me was a mother for Ben. He as good as admitted it, and in retrospect it makes complete sense. That's why he never wanted to get married or buy into my house even though I offered, though now of course I am grateful, because he wanted to make it as easy as possible to split from me once Ben was old enough to no longer require my services. I think it might even explain why he was so hard on Ben and grasping at straws for a reason to send him away. I never expected it of him based on what else I knew, or I never would have been with him, but if he was blaming Ben for getting in the way of his life and simultaneously feeling guilty for, that could turn a mild-mannered person mean, I think. Maybe he even thought if Ben was away most of the time the other woman would be willing to compromise for a few years? I don't know. I've even been wondering whether he decided to pursue me before we even met. The boys met first through an extracurricular where they became friends. It's possible that Jason mentioned my being single in passing, allowing Bob to identify me as potentially suitable before we ever met. I'm sorry this is such a mopey post. I truly am grateful for the way things worked out, I think it's the best possible solution for everyone under the circumstances, and not one I could have achieved without Bob's help. And the boys have been wonderful. They didn't know I was trying to get Bob out anyway, so they've been treating me very gently, or as gently as you can expect teenage boys to be, anyway, and trying to pretend they aren't thrilled Bob is gone when I'm in the room. I'm glad of that, to be honest. I'm so grateful he's gone and Ben is still safe here with us. I just need a bit of time to really remember it, I think.